Welcome to another edition of the Nightly Nuge. Ted, I'm sure you saw in the news, Salman Rushdie was attacked on stage and pretty severely injured. And this is all because of something that he said and something that he wrote, which the last time I looked was protected by the First Amendment. And I want you to talk about that, but I also want to put it in this context. I was listening to a New York City-based talk radio program where they took calls from the audience there in New York, and a guy called, and the question was, should the First Amendment be restricted when it offends someone else? And this caller called in and said 100%, because if you're offending Muslims, then that speech should be banned. If you're offending gays or transgenders, that speech should be banned. So in essence, according to that caller, there is no First Amendment. What's your take on this whole stabbing of the poor author and the First Amendment in general?
Well, Rolling Stone magazine has a First Amendment, and they wrote a lie that I dodged the draft. That's a lie. I didn't dodge the draft. I was Bruce Lee in 1969. I could have probably won the war if it was a legal war. They wrote an article that my song Snakeskin Cowboys is the most offensive homophobic song ever. This song has absolutely nothing to do with homophobia. It has nothing to do with homosexuality. What is it? The Huffington Post wrote that I made nasty comments about the Native Americans. Never in my life. They lie. And you know what? None of that offended me, because they have the right to lie. They have the right to make up stuff. Now, I could probably go after them for libel and slander, which we've seen many cases where our good friend Kyle Rittenhouse won that type of thing. And that poor young man on the steps of the Capitol when he was being abused by a drum-beating Indian. And they claimed that the young man was the nasty guy and all he did was smile. So I'm a 100% supporter of the First Amendment. And by the way, my name is Ted Nugent. You can't offend me. I'm unoffendable because I have a spine and my intellect knows what I am and who I am. Now let's get to the most important part of the attack on Salman Rushdie. Every night I'm surrounded by dear friends of mine, hunting buddies. They just happen to be Delta Force, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Green Berets, SWAT commanders. These guys, they chew crowbars for recreation. And I promise you, if anybody wants to try a Dave Chappelle or a Salman Rushdie with Ted Nugent, good luck. I'll work it into the act. We need to have security against people who think that we don't have freedoms because their feelings are hurt. We need to have open dialogue, uninhibited, irreverent, offensive. The First Amendment is about protecting speech considered offensive. The First Amendment is about protecting speech. Who is the guy that had the Hustler magazine? He won those cases. And what is more disgusting than what Hustler magazine wrote and what they did to women? And this creep that some guy ended up shooting this guy. I can't remember his name right now. Famous
Larry Flint.
Yep, I'm sure you knew that case well because it went on and on and on. And some guy did shoot the guy with the 44 Magnum. Yeah. He prevailed because the First Amendment protects offensive speech.
Yeah, you know what, Ted? I want to add one other thing here. So the facility where Salman Rushdie was speaking, they decided to provide no security. And in their words, it would have created a barrier between the audience and the speaker. What's your take there?
Well, that's just so stupid. Every time I turn around, I hear stupid stuff like that. What the hell does security have to do with honest and open speech? I'll tell you what it has to do with it. Nothing. You're able to get his words across. That's all that matters in a speaking presentation. I need a security man, kind of like a dairy farmer needs a milkman. But I do have extra milkmen on hand just in case there's any lactose-free desires out there. My point is that those are the kind of circumstances that I believe are being manipulated because our so-called learning institutions in this country, academia, is so far off the left cliff that they literally, I think, would like to see harm come to someone who disagrees with them. So all I can tell you is anybody going out there, Ann Coulter stopped doing speeches. There's a lot of comedians that are stopping doing their comedy, because comedy is about abrasiveness and irreverence and edgy stuff, like my music. And this is a sad day in America, because our founding fathers knew that the King Punk George, would send his thugs to abuse people if they spoke out against, draconian and immoral regulations. But here we are in 2022, all these years later, and we still have that mindset that our founding fathers had to write down the First Amendment because we were writing down our response and our defiance against the king. We can choose our religion. We can choose our speech. We have privacy against the government intrusion. We can protest the government. That's the First Amendment, because it's sensible, it's common sense, it's self-evident truth. And then, of course, the most important one of all is the Second Amendment, to make sure that the other amendments have some teeth. This isn't a Ted Nugent perspective. This statement I'm making today, like almost every one I've ever said, will go down in history as obviously truth, logic, and common sense. I'm your truth, logic, and common sense daddy. Write it down.
You know what? I'd encourage our listeners not only to share the fact that the Nightly Nuge is here to all your friends, whether it's at church or wherever you see your friends, but I'd also encourage you to join Ted and I at hunternation.org. Yes, it's about the hunting lifestyle at some level, but it's more about just freedom. Join fellow patriots at hunternation.org. I don't think you'll regret it. We need you. The more folks that we have at the Concord Bridge with us, the more likely we beat the tyrant, King George. Come back tomorrow night, because I'm going to talk to Ted about the judge that signed the search warrant of the raid on Trump's home. Come back again tomorrow night, because there's no fake news here at the Nightly Nuge.